So what is a baffle junction? So a baffle is this vertical partition that separates out chambers, and a lot of quilts and sleep systems will have baffles that come together in junctions at different angles. See here we've got baffles heading this way, teeing into a perpendicular baffle this way, and the question is, what does a manufacturer do at that junction when baffles come together teed like this? Does that junction get left open, or does it get sewn closed? This is what it looks like when it's sewn closed. Baffle, the vertical baffle heads this way, tees into this horizontal baffle here, and it's sewn together in there. And then on this side we have what is more common, which is when a baffle is teeing into this baffle and it's left open. Now, of course, most of the time they are left open, and there's two reasons for that. One, if a manufacturer's procedure and workflow requires that they need to fill through those openings, they need to have their filler nozzle fit through these junctions so that they can fill one chamber and then the next chamber and then the next chamber through the side, and then they can pull their filler nozzle out this way and close that up. Now that's often a reason that can be worked around. Manufacturer can change their workflow so that they fill from the other end, or they fill in a different way that allows them to close those junctions. However, the really big reason why those are usually left open is it's just a lot of labor to get back in there, because you can't include that seam in any of the other seams here. This is really something where the manufacturer has to specifically get in there before this shell is on and tack those together before they work the procedure for sewing to this shell. So they literally will have to go and do a short little seam and tack every single junction throughout a system, and that ends up being pretty labor intensive, but which would be worth it. However, in most real world situations, it's not really required, because if you picture this, you have equal density of down in each of these chambers, and each plume of down it wants to stick to things. It doesn't really want to force through a gap like that when there's equal pressure on each side, keeping everything in place. So throughout normal use of a quilt or sleeping bag or jacket, down isn't really going to migrate through that hole very easily. However, there is one case where that is kind of a critical issue, and that is in washing. So when you wash a sleep system or a quilt, a half an ounce of down can get wet and compressed down into a tiny little ball, kind of maybe even as small as this 100-gram weight here. And when it's that wet and that compressed, it gets really heavy. And in that case, as you wash a system and it gets agitated and you put it into the dryer and it gets agitated more, what happens is this little ball of down, that you've got here in this chamber, you've gone from all this down that's filling the chamber, and you've got it all wet and it's compressed into a ball. And as you're agitating it in the washer and dryer, that lump of down can now slide right over into the next chamber. And now you've got an empty chamber here, or mostly empty chamber here, and a really overfilled chamber here. So in that case, the junction with that's sewn together so that they are actually teed together and sewn, you know, that one is going to keep your down in place. And so in that regard, when you are washing it, this system would be superior. However, like I said, this open junction is much more common. It really only becomes an issue during washing, and there are steps that a user can take to prevent that from happening. In most cases, these open junctions are restricted to one sort of area on a quilt, and the user can take precautions to prevent that wet ball of down from moving through that junction into another chamber. That's a topic for another video. But if you have a system and you're wondering how to check and see if you have open junctions or closed junctions, obviously, you know, we can't open it up and take a look in there, but what we can do is we can take a finger and push it into the shell here and push it back towards that junction, and you can start to, let's do it this way. If you do that, you can start to feel that area, and inside what's actually happening is you can push your finger into the fabric, and through that junction you can feel whether it's open, or in this case over here with it closed, you know, I can feel that there is no opening there, it's just a closed seam.